What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers. And today I am joined by, as always, Brayden Dowers. And conference championship weekend has now concluded, meaning we can start to finally break down the college football playoff, who will be in it, Mizzou's bowl game, which is what most of you are here for, because we're going to talk about that as well as some other Mizzou-related news. But tonight's just going to kind of be a little bit of a pregame show for the college football playoff being selected, and then, of course, the NY6 Bowls, because Mizzou is NY6 bowl bound. So Brayden and I are here to predict and talk about the different possibilities for the NY6 Bowls, which one Mizzou could possibly get, as well as the matchup. And then I want to let all of you know that are here, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this after the fact. But we're going to do a giveaway for this, something a little bit different that I wanted to try out. But if you guys want to go ahead and leave your predictions down below in the comments, again, you can do it right now. You can do it at the end of the video, whatever. But go ahead and leave your prediction down below in the comments who you think Mizzou will be matched up against in an NY6 Bowl, as well as which NY6 Bowl they'll be in. And if you correctly guess the bowl game and the matchup, you will win a free Show Me Football tumbler. Looks just like that. Nothing too special, but I'll be giving that away to whoever can correctly guess the matchup and the bowl in which Mizzou will play in. And I know some of you may guess the correct bowl matchup, meaning we'd have multiple people with the correct answer. And in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter everyone's correct guess into a pool, or into it's going to be like a random picker for the winner. Sorry. And then I will select the winner from that. And then your name will be announced on the next episode that we do once Mizzou gets in their bowl game, and Brayden and I will react to that. And then I'll also try to reach out to whoever the winner is on Twitter. In fact, it would probably help if you guys just left your Twitter handle down below when you make your prediction. But yeah, we're going to have that going on. So make sure you guys leave your predictions down below for a chance to win the free tumbler. But with all that being said, Brayden, conference championship weekend has now concluded. The winners of the championship games were Michigan for the Big Ten, Florida State for the ACC, Alabama for the SEC, and then Texas for the Big 12. There were a couple other ones, but of course they don't matter in the scheme of the college football playoff. But we'll start the show with this. Who are your four teams that you think are going to make the college football playoff? And then after that, tell me who tell me who you think is going to be in the playoff, and then tell me who you think should be in the playoff. And if the answer is the same, well, then you just go ahead and say that.
But I think that the playoffs, I think for sure the top three teams are going to be Washington, Texas, in that order. I could see Washington possibly jumping Michigan and being the one, but I still think that Michigan, with their 26-0 win over Iowa, and then it's just Bama or FSU. And I think you got to give it to FSU, like non-biased. You can't take out an undefeated team. I'm sorry. Like an undefeated team versus a one-loss team to you have an undefeated team and then you have a team that's already lost to one of the top three teams. No, like, sorry. Does Bama deserve to be in the playoffs? Yes. Should there be an 8-team, 12-team playoff? That would be very nice, and luckily we're getting it next year. Bama definitely deserves to be in. I think that the four best teams in college football right now are probably Georgia, Bama. This is in no particular order. Those two. I'm going to say Washington and Oregon are my 3 and 4, honestly. I'm not confident in Michigan's ability to actually win anything of substance outside of the Big Ten. FSU's going to get housed in the playoffs without Jordan Travis, which is the main reason why they could miss it, but I don't see that happening. Still very well could. It's the committee. We've seen some absolute bullfuckery before.
Oh, yeah. Well, so real quick to answer Nathan Barnes' question, when will we find out what game we get? tomorrow is when they reveal everything. So we'll probably know which bowl game Mizzou is going to be in by about I don't know, sometime in the afternoon tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then for you guys' predictions, because I see some of them are already coming in. Eddie Rose says Cotton Bowl. Make sure you leave who you think we're going to play in which bowl game. Make sure you name an opponent too, because that will be factored into who wins the prediction. You got to get the opponent and the bowl game. Anyway, so I think my gut is telling me what it's going to be is Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. That's what I think they're good. Like that's what is my gut is telling me is going to be the top 4 in the college football playoff. I think I agree with you. Florida State should be in the playoff, so it should be Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Florida State, because the argument is that they're undefeated and they won their conference championship, and they're a Power 5 team. In no way should a team that was undefeated and won their conference championship in a power conference be left out of the playoff. I just feel like that's ridiculous. I know they don't have Jordan Travis. I know that their playoff game is probably going to be uncompetitive, but they earned it, you know? Like, I look at it kind of like the NFL. You know, let's just say the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes got injured in the final game of the regular season, but the Chiefs were the 1 seed. You know, they don't fall out of the playoff. They still, you know, they get to play in a playoff game. They deserved it. They earned it. They earned that record. They earned a 1 seed or whatever they would get, because the 1 seed doesn't play on wild card weekend. But you get my point. That's all semantics right there. But I just think Florida State deserves to be in. They deserve to be in. Now, if you want to do 4 best teams, hell, we could do this without Texas, and I think you put Georgia back in there or something like that. But I think Florida State deserves to be in. I also think that Texas deserves to be in over Alabama. I saw some people trying to argue Bama over Texas. I'm sorry. Texas beat Alabama head-to-head, and they were a 1-loss conference champion.
That was at Bama. That was in Tuscaloosa. No, Texas is better, period.
Yeah, so to me, there's really no argument there.
But they deserve to be ahead.
Yeah. And I know a lot of Bama fans are going to say, but we're a better team now, and that was early in the season. It doesn't matter. You know, you still played the game. You lost. Texas won that game. They have that over you. So this college football playoff, I think it's either going to be Bama or FSU. I think the top 3 teams are pretty much solidified. It's going to be Michigan, Michigan, Washington, and Texas. Those are the top 3, I think, for sure. We'll find out who that 4th team is tomorrow. Brayden and I gave our piece, but we'll see who the committee decides. The committee can pretty much do whatever they want. They've already shown that they're not afraid to drop Florida State because of the Jordan Travis injury, because I believe they did that literally the week after he got hurt. They dropped a spot, so they're not afraid to do that. But we'll see if they have the guts to leave out an undefeated team, because there's going to be a riot either way. There's going to be a riot if they leave out the SEC completely. There's going to be a riot if they leave out Florida State, but we'll see.
Over.
Yeah. And honestly, like, even though Georgia lost, if you want to go 4 best teams, I think Georgia still deserves to be in the playoffs, because I just, you know, Georgia, Bama, that's always going to be a close game. That's always a tough matchup. Someone has to lose, but you know, either one of them could get into the playoff, in my opinion, but it would probably be Alabama since they won the championship game. But we get the college football playoff covered. Now let's talk about Mizzou Bowl scenarios, and that's why everyone's here. What NY6 Bowl is Mizzou going to play in? So I know there's a couple people that were still afraid of being Mizzou'd and afraid of Mizzou getting screwed out of an NY6 Bowl. They are locked into an NY6 Bowl. There was no chaos today. Mizzou was essentially locked into an NY6 Bowl when Texas won the Big 12 championship. You know, there was a scenario in which Oklahoma State beats Texas, a little bit of chaos ensues. Oklahoma State could jump ahead of Mizzou or whatever. That's not happening. Mizzou's going to an NY6 Bowl. Question is, which one do they play in? There's 3 possibilities that we know of. That's Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, and Fiesta Bowl. Brayden and I were talking about this before we started up, but there's already been a couple projections now from 24/7 Sports and Brett McMurphy of Action Network. Both of them have Mizzou going to the Fiesta Bowl. Now, 24/7 Sports had Mizzou going to Fiesta Bowl and playing the Group of 5 team. I hope that's not the case. I know a lot of people want to stay away from the group of 5 game. But Brett McMurphy, who I think is a little bit more plugged in and accurate with these bowl projections, despite the fact that he peddles the story that Mizzou ducked Kansas, nonetheless, he's still pretty accurate with this bowl stuff. And he has Mizzou playing Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. I would actually be a huge fan of that one. And we'll talk about that in a second, but just running down a couple more different scenarios here. So like Gabe DeArmond, I know on his message board, he put up what he thinks are the different scenarios. He said if FSU wins and misses the playoff, so this is if they decide to keep FSU out of the playoff, the Orange Bowl would be Georgia versus Florida State, Fiesta, Oregon versus a P5 team, or group of 5 teams, sorry, Cotton Bowl, Ole Miss versus Penn State, and then Peach, Mizzou versus Ohio State. So if FSU does get left out of the playoff, Mizzou could potentially take on Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. I think a lot of people would be excited about that matchup as well. I definitely would be intrigued by a game like that. You could potentially upset a huge brand in Ohio State in an NY6 Bowl. And then another scenario that Gabe had is if I scroll down, or that was if FSU misses the playoff. Now, if Alabama, or sorry, gosh, this is so confusing. So there's also another scenario in which if Texas is out for whatever reason, the Orange Bowl would be Georgia versus Louisville, Fiesta, Oregon versus group of 5 team. Cotton would be Ohio State versus Texas. Peach would be Penn State versus Mizzou. I also believe we could still get Penn State versus Mizzou because this is what he put if Texas was out. I don't think Texas is out, but Peach versus Penn State is still very much possible. You could still, justify Mizzou versus Penn State for the Peach Bowl. If SMU is the group of 5 team that gets an NY6 Bowl, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Go ahead.
It's probably going to be Liberty as the group of 5 team because they went undefeated.
That's what I'm thinking.
USA. I think it would have been Tulane if Tulane beat SMU today, but I mean, Willie Fritz basically said that he's leaving Tulane after, before that game even started. So there's definitely a lack of care by Tulane in that game.
Yeah, and I think the committee will consider that too. Now, if they get an NY6 Bowl, would Willie Fritz stick around? Because if you guys didn't know, The Athletic is reporting that Willie Fritz is taking the Houston job, and we're going to get into that a little bit later too, because that has Mizzou implications. But does Willie Fritz stay with Tulane for an NY6 Bowl, or does he just immediately go to Houston? And then the College Football Playoff Committee is like, the Bulls, they're like, well, we're not going to bring Tulane without their head coach.
Yeah. Tulane, they lost to SMU. They're not getting in the NY6. It could be SMU. I don't see that happening. I think they have to give it to the only undefeated group of 5 team. I mean, Liberty's deserving of it. If we play Liberty, whatever, I guess. I mean, that's a game that you expect to win. If we would play them, I would assume it would be in the Cotton. My personal favorite would be to play Penn State because I think that they are a national brand that Mizzou matches up extremely well against, and I think that we can impress a lot of the country if we just absolutely house Penn State, because I genuinely think that we'd beat the shit out of them. Ohio State, obviously a lot higher risk, higher reward in that situation. If we go into, like you said, either the Peach Bowl or whatever against Ohio State, and we are able to pull off an upset, because Ohio State would definitely be favored against us. If we're able to pull off that upset, beat Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison Jr., and pull that off, I mean, the endless possibilities for recruiting and just the glamour of the season, being 11-2 with a win against number 6 ranked Ohio State. That's where they are right now. They'll probably stay about there, I bet. I don't know. Honestly, I could see something where, I don't know. Like you said, like all these bold predictions are so confusing because it really depends on if FSU makes it into the playoffs or if it's Bama, because then it just depends on where Mizzou moves in those slots for the SEC, those bowl contract tie-ins.
Yeah.
There was a comment earlier that said that we could get left out again.
Yeah. I was gonna address that real quick. John Jansen, Alabama beating Georgia hurts Mizzou's chances at an NY6 bowl. That actually is not true. The only scenario that Alabama beating Georgia doesn't hurt Mizzou. The only scenario that would have helped Mizzou is obviously Georgia beating the crap out of Bama.
Yeah.
But this doesn't. This is just a rearranging of the 8 teams that were already above Mizzou. It doesn't, and it just changes who's in the playoff. But Mizzou's not getting left out of an NY6 bowl. Mizzou's only shot of being left out of an NY6 bowl is if we got an absolute chaos scenario that started with Oklahoma State beating Texas. Yeah. That did not happen.
That would have needed a win. That would have needed Oklahoma State to win.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't even think of what else would have needed to happen. But for sure.
It had to have started with Oklahoma State beating Texas. That did not happen. Mizzou is locked into an NY6 bowl, either Fiesta, Peach, or Cotton. But look, I'm not trying to like single you out or anything, John, because like a lot of people are still confused about how these rules work and stuff. And some of these bowls, like Brayden mentioned, have like contracts and everything with the different conferences. But Mizzou's going to an NY6 bowl. There is no way in which they get left out. But the scenario that people are worried about is if Mizzou has to end up playing like the group of 5 school in a Fiesta Bowl. And most likely what the matchup would be and what 24/7 Sports is predicting is Mizzou versus Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. That would be very disappointing to me because I just feel like no one cares if you beat them. You don't gain anything from beating them. If you lose to them, it's embarrassing. You lost to Liberty, and it kind of takes a little bit of the shine off of this season and how special it's been. And also, I think you also risk a lot of players opting out for the bowl game. We kind of touched on who we think might opt out or whatever, but I think I'm not saying a bunch of Mizzou players are going to opt out of an NY6 bowl. However, I think you're going to have trouble keeping some of them and getting a lot of them up for a game versus Liberty as opposed to like Oregon or Ohio State. Like, I feel like you can get these guys fired up for a matchup against a Big Ten school or a Pac-12 school. It's going to be a lot harder to sell a matchup versus Liberty. So we're hoping to stay away from that one. I have seen some Mizzou fans, though, say that they would like, or they don't care if they wouldn't necessarily like if it's a group of 5 school, but they'll take it because it's a game you can win and all you're trying to do is get to 11 wins. I understand that, but I'd rather go out there and beat a big brand because, again, if you lose to Liberty, that's going to sting. That's going to have a little bit more of a sting factor. If you play Ohio State, let's just say you lose, there's no shame in losing to Ohio State, and most people are going to forget about that game by next season.
Like, nobody's going to really hold on to a loss against Ohio State. And again, I mean, it would suck, and that's a game that you are obviously trying to get up for. But if you just tell me, like, after the season, the only thing that we're playing for is a New Year's Six Bowl, which is a massive game. But if you tell me, like, oh, we lost the bowl game against Ohio State, I'm not going to be, like, exponentially disappointed. It's going to be like, oh, well, that sucks. But would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't think I talked about this on the last show that we did, but I'm far more invested in the idea of making an NY6 bowl game and just kind of getting that attention of making an NY6 bowl. I'm more concerned about that than I actually am about winning it. I don't care as much about winning the game. I just want to say that Mizzou was in an NY6 bowl this year. And some people may disagree. I just don't think that this season has been extremely special. I don't think it becomes anything less special if you lose an NY6 bowl, of course, versus one of those bigger brands. A loss to Liberty would kind of stink, but I just don't think you lose anything if you lose to an Ohio State or an Oregon. This is much more about getting Mizzou's name out there as a brand. This is more about selling, playing in a big game to recruits and stuff like that. But there's no shame in losing it if they do lose it. Now, 11 wins would be awesome, and you're still trying to get that 11th win, but still.
I didn't touch on Oregon. I know that I mentioned Ohio State and Penn State because I think that we match up well against Penn State, and Ohio State I think we could also possibly beat. Depending on who would opt out for Oregon, like if Bo Nix just happened to not play against us, then I like our matchup against Oregon. But if Bo Nix is playing and they have a lot of their guys staying, that's not a matchup that I like for Mizzou. Oregon's offense is so high-powered. I think that they just kind of tear Mizzou's defense apart, and I think that Oregon's defense is good enough to slow down Mizzou's offense. I honestly thought that Oregon was going to steamroll Washington. That game really surprised me, but I think that Washington's probably like I said, I think that they are actually a top 4 team in the college football playoffs, and I would not be surprised if Washington wins the Natty this year. Again, Oregon's not really a matchup that I like for Mizzou, so that's probably the lowest on my totem pole outside of the group of 5. I would still rather play Oregon than Liberty. But if I'm ranking the 4 most likely that I think that everybody can agree on that we could possibly face, Penn State is my number 1 that I want to face, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, Liberty 4. Just to give my prediction, I think it's probably going to be the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon, mainly because that's what McMurphy said, and a lot of people are putting us in the Fiesta. Maybe it's against the group of 5 team, but I would assume that it's Oregon because I don't think that they want to shaft Oregon with a group of 5 team. I think the only team that they could really shaft with that group of 5 team would probably be Penn State. Stick them with that because that you're going to get viewers from any Penn State game no matter what. That just makes sense from a TV perspective.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different aspects to unpack here as far as a potential matchup. So we were talking about opt-outs potentially. Now that's something that we have to watch for the Mizzou side, but let's just say they do get matched up against Oregon. I know you're afraid of the Oregon matchup, and that's a tough one for Mizzou, but what if Bo Nix does opt out? What if he doesn't play that game and says, hey, I'm focusing on the NFL draft. We're bummed about not making the playoffs, so my season's done. I don't really care. That instantly becomes a lot more appealing of a matchup for Mizzou because the game becomes a lot more winnable. And then you're going to say, hey, we beat Oregon. No one's going to remember that Oregon didn't have Bo Nix for that game except for like Oregon fans and Mizzou fans. People are just going to see it as Mizzou beat Oregon. It's going to be a great win for the program. So that's a way to look at it. Penn State, I feel like, is the most winnable. Like, if we're going to get matched up against whether it's Oregon, as far as Power 5 teams go, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Penn State, to me, is the most winnable game because Penn State's defense is really good, but I think Mizzou's offense is good enough to definitely put up points against them. And then Penn State's offense is so horrible that I just think Mizzou's defense could feast in that game. I'm not scared of Penn State whatsoever. I think Mizzou could win that game by double digits, if I'm being honest. And then Ohio State, not as confident in that game, but I'm still not as impressed with their offense. It's definitely a game you could still win. It's a tough matchup. Ohio State is definitely a top 10 team as well, but that's a game that Mizzou could win. They're not necessarily a high-powered offense. Marvin Harrison Jr., if he does play in that game, is a scary matchup for our DBs, and that's if our DBs are there. Because, again, opt-outs, it's something you have to consider. What if Ennis Rakeshaw or Chris Abrams-Draine isn't there? Then that matchup becomes a lot harder. But what if Marvin Harrison says, hey, I'm going to go focus on the NFL draft? Well, then Ohio State just lost their best offensive weapon for that game. Those are things to consider. But just on the surface, if you're asking me who I would want to play out of all those schools, give me Oregon. Like, I know you say it's the toughest matchup. I'm not scared of them. I would love to beat Oregon. Ohio State's probably second on my list, and honestly, depending on the time that you ask me, I might say Ohio State instead. And then Penn State, even though I said it's the most winnable, and I definitely would not be disappointed by being matched up with them, but I want to beat the best team possible. I want to be matched up with the best team possible. And Ohio State's a big one too, because that's a school that's like stolen our recruits a lot over the years. Like Ohio State invades St. Louis for the most elite recruits. And I just think if Mizzou could go out there and kick Ohio State's ass and be like Jeremiah McClellan, he's currently committed to Ohio State, be like, look, we just beat that school that you're committed to. Like, maybe consider us again. Like, I know that's not how it works, but you could definitely catch the attention of some recruits by being a school like that. Now, I want to reiterate this one more time because I know some more people have jumped in since I started. But, guys, we are running a giveaway for the NY6 Bowl, whichever one Mizzou goes to. So what we're doing is if you can lead down in the comments, whether you're watching this live or after the fact, leave your prediction down below, what bowl game you think Mizzou gets and who their opponent is. If you can correctly guess the bowl game that they get and the matchup, you can win a free Show Me Football tumbler. And I will announce the winner in the episode following the selection of the bowls that Brayden and I do, reacting to the bowl matchup. And if multiple people get the right answer, I will put that into a random picker, and then that's how I will determine the winner. The winner will be announced again on the next video that we do, and we'll try to track you down on Twitter as well. I'll announce it on my Twitter, which is at ShowMeFB, and then yeah, we'll see who wins that. But go ahead and leave your predictions down below in the comments, and maybe you'll win. We'll see. But yeah, addressing a couple comments, Eddie Rose says it also means if we beat a big name school, people would pay more attention to Mizzou, talking about how Drink has turned this program around. Yeah, it would just be better or more momentum for the program. And you just get a lot more attention nationally. And it also, I think, would help your preseason ranking going into next year if you end the season off on a good note and beating a team like that, because you're returning Brady Cook, you're returning Luther Burden. Theo Weiss seems like he's leaning towards coming back. You bring largely the same offense back. Hopefully you hold on to Kirby Moore. But, you know, I think that could definitely get you ranked in the top 25 heading into next year easily.
I definitely think that that's like if we were able to beat Ohio State in a bowl game, I think that we could probably end the season maybe in the top 5. I mean, that's very possible. Like depending on the score and depending on other games, that's like if we were able to win that, I think that Mizzou would end up being in the top 5 at the end of the season, AP poll at least. I don't really have too much more to say. I guess the 2 big talking points that we have left are the Tulane
Portal season?
Portal season, basically what's happened with that. DJ Westlock leaving, and then possibly Blake Baker to Tulane, which would suck. My opinion on the Westlock is it sucks. He was a 4-star, but he didn't really get that much playing time. And I don't know if he would have gotten that much playing time next year. It seemed like you mentioned that there were some sorts of allegations against him and he couldn't really go anywhere else. Now,
coming out of high school.
Yeah. Things seem to have died down a bit, so he might be able to actually find playing time elsewhere, and hope he does well, hope he has the best. But it's not the biggest loss, and I'm honestly surprised because we've been seeing a lot of portal news already, especially like for bowl eligible teams and teams in the top 25. So, and like Westlock and Max Wisner are the only 2 Mizzou guys that I think that I've seen leave. There's definitely been a few.
There's a couple more. Damian Wilson, the reserve linebacker, also entered the transfer portal. Carmicah Glass, who is another reserve linebacker. And I'm trying to think of who else. EJ Ndoma Ogar, offensive guard, who transferred in from Oklahoma a couple years ago. That one kind of stings just a little bit because I was hoping he could maybe win one of the guard spots over the last couple of years. He was a road grader in the run game. Every time he was on the field, he seemed to flash, but he could just never win one of the starting spots. But hope he does well wherever he goes. And something that I've noticed, and maybe I'm just reading into this a little bit too much, but I feel like this year, with the way things went and how this season has been, a lot of these transfers are leaving Mizzou very gracefully. You notice in all their like goodbye posts, it's like, thank you, Drinkwitz, thank you, Mizzou football. Love the memories we made this year. And so it's like no hard feelings. Like these guys, they couldn't find playing time here. They're going somewhere to find playing time, but they enjoyed their time as a Tiger, and I hope they all find success elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot better way that people are leaving the school than they did last year, specifically trade like Jeff Coat, like literally saying like
love it,
Bucks, and then not like only racking up what it was at 7 tackles on the season.
Dominic Lovett leaving Mizzou to go find greener pastures in Georgia just to have 2 catches for 23 yards in the SEC championship game and lose. And he's probably going to be in maybe a marginally better bowl game than Mizzou.
Yeah.
What a terrible career move.
I mean, Levitt didn't really have like any nice send off for Mizzou fans either. So, I mean, seeing like complete backups who never saw the field, like thanking this team for the memories that they had. I mean, that's nice to see. Some of the names that I know that we've been talking about, just sending to each other back and forth. The tackle from Texas Tech was one of the top tackles in the
Yeah, I believe
class.
he's from Missouri too, originally.
Which is why everybody's kind of thinking about him. We got a JUCO tackle who was, I think, the number 2 tackle out of
Yeah,
all of JUCO.
Javen Richardson.
Excited for him. There's a couple other guys, but like I've been really surprised by the lack of Mizzou names that have left so far, mainly because I think that everybody that was a part of this team likes it and they want to stay. And the culture that Drinkwitz has built has been very, who gives a fuck about money? Like, let's go win. And I think that Drinkwitz has got the right mindset of guys to build this program around. So that's something that's really exciting to see. Very few names leave so far, and hopefully Drink can hit it out of the park. Get a running back, Ollie Gordon, ETN from Florida would be nice as well. Kind of just pipe dreaming on both of those, but I mean, Mizzou fans are kind of just talking it into existence about Florida and Ollie Gordon possibly from Oklahoma State.
Right. Yeah, because like I posted something about how or a wish list for the transfer portal and how a lot of guys like right now they're just hopefuls, but there's been rumors about each of them at one point or another. Toriano Pride was one of them, and he entered the portal. He's a former 4-star recruit from a couple years ago from East St. Louis, same high school as Luther Burden. He entered the transfer portal. Mizzou seems to be the early favorite for him. That would be a good addition, especially since we're losing both starting cornerbacks this year, in Ennis and KAD. I'm trying to think of who else entered that like Mizzou has like immediately been mentioned for. There was the K-State corner who was originally from Kirkwood, Missouri. He seems like a name to watch. What were you about to say?
Who was the guy that Gabe mentioned that we should be keeping an eye on? He was from
Pride.
Illinois.
That was
Okay.
Toriano Pride. Yeah, from East St. Louis. So yeah, portal season is here, and now that conference championship weekend is over, you're going to see some players from teams that were participating in conference championship weekend potentially hit the portal. Ollie Gordon being one of them. I don't know. We'll see, but he did leave the game with 5 minutes to go. He went to the locker room. So I don't know. I mentioned that one, and I had an Oklahoma State fan reply, and he's like, why would he leave? You know, we have strong NIL. I'm not saying Oklahoma State doesn't have a good NIL program. I'm not even saying that he is leaving, but you're stupid to think that these players aren't listening to what's out there. There's always a few guys every year from just about every team that we say, wait, hold on, why are they leaving? Or that's a little bit of a shock. And he could be one of those guys. We'll see. But transfer portal season is here.
Their top edge rushers just say, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, it's like there will be big names that hit the portal. There's already been a couple that have hit the portal. There's Washington State's quarterback, and I think their top wide receiver.
Riley Burden, Will Howard.
Yeah, so there's guys that are starting to hit the portal already, but we'll definitely be keeping track of that on here. We may even have some big names tomorrow to talk about, as well as Mizzou's bowl once they are selected for their bowl. The last thing we'll talk about, so the Athletic is reporting, as well as a couple other sources, that Willie Fritz, Houston is closing in on Willie Fritz, the current Tulane head coach, to be the next head coach of their football program. This has Mizzou implications because defensive coordinator Blake Baker is a Tulane grad. He played linebacker at Tulane. It's his alma mater. I've already seen quite a few Tulane fans bring his name up as far as a guy that could replace Willie Fritz. Now, the Willie Fritz thing is not official yet, but it looks like it's going to happen. And if it does, I think Mizzou fans should be very worried about losing Blake Baker as head coach of Tulane because I think, you look at Tulane, they're an attractive destination right now. Willie Fritz is leaving because he's reached a ceiling there. He's getting a better offer elsewhere. But they've won. Well, I know they didn't win their conference today, but they've been atop their conference for a couple years now. Willie Fritz has done a great job there. And for someone like Blake Baker looking to jump into his first head coaching opportunity, going to his alma mater, that seems like one where Blake Baker is high on Tulane's list, and Blake Baker would absolutely say yes to that job, meaning that Mizzou would be searching for a new defensive coordinator. Nothing official, but I definitely think that Mizzou fans need to be worried about losing Blake Baker to Tulane.
Yeah. He's probably number one on their board, though. When we saw that the Boise State job opened up, and that's Kirby Moore's alma mater,
Yeah.
he just kind of said, I'm okay. And they just kind of mutually said that they didn't want to. I know that there were some reports saying that Blake Baker absolutely would take the Tulane job and that Tulane was high on him. I'm going to I'm going to keep the mindset that Blake Baker is Mizzou's offensive coordinator until he's not.
Or DC, you mean?
Yeah, defensive coordinator until he's not. I don't really have any big names that I would say to replace him. I think another guy you mentioned him earlier in the season, our wide receivers coach. He could very well offensive coordinator job somewhere else because he's done an absolutely fantastic job with Luther and Theo and Mookie and so many other guys. Definitely just names to keep an eye on. But, I mean, it's a good problem to have that you are having your coordinators go to one of, if not the best group of five team over the last 2 or 3 seasons and have them and like they are the name for the head coach.
Yeah, no, definitely a good problem to have. However, I would love to keep on to these guys for just one more season and have that continuity, especially since Blake Baker's defenses seem to always perform well against the top teams like Georgia. Like Blake Baker has had the answer for Georgia the past couple years. It's been the offense that kind of hasn't really held up their end. But Kirby Moore has obviously done a really great job with this unit, and I think bringing him back for just one more year would be awesome. It would be huge for this team because I think they can make a real run at the college football playoff next year. And bringing back both coordinators only increases their chances of completing something like that. So
to answer John Jason's question, I personally love the Smurf turf. Turf is absolutely fantastic, but it's even better when their running back is absolutely phenomenal on it. That's another name that Mizzou fans should be keeping an eye on. Is
Ashton Genty.
He's another running back that we could possibly be getting because running back's obviously going to be a massive need with Schrader leaving. We don't really have anybody behind him that I think's worth too much.
We don't really have anyone that's taken more than like one snap in a game. So
yeah, like we need to hit the portal hard on running back. I'd like to get 2, just to be sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm high on Jamal Roberts. It seems like the team is as well, but like I'm not handing the keys to the running back room to a freshman that's gotten like 2 carries. Yeah, you can't do that, especially like if we're talking about like a 5-star recruit, like Grand Slam running back out of high school or something that you could give playing time to. Like, yeah, I would understand that, but we don't have that. So definitely we'll have to hit the portal hard at several positions, but I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode here. We broke down the different possibilities for Mizzou in an NY6 Bowl, but they are heading to an NY6 Bowl. There is no scenario in which Mizzou could get Mizzou'd out of a NY6 Bowl. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about that. Mizzou's going to NY6 Bowl. We'll see what happens. Make sure to leave your predictions on the bowl game and the opponent in the comments for a chance to win a free Show Me Football tumbler. But yeah, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. Make sure you check out Show Me Movies, which is in the description down below, our other channel where we do movie reviews. I just did a reaction to the Terrifier 3 teaser. It's hitting it out of the park right now. Brayden just uploaded a Godzilla movie review. He wants you all to know his thoughts on that movie, so go check out Show Me Movies. But yeah, we'll see you all in the next one, and MIZ.
ZOU.